This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English. Here's your host, Martin Johnston.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English, episode number 64. And in today's episode, for a change, I speak to Dan the Man about Halloween. It's a Halloween special. Well, I say special, it's not really special, it just sounds better. Anyway, some quick things to tell you before the podcast starts. There is some lovely third conditional in this episode from Dan the Man, but to understand it, you need to understand the word stab. And stab means when someone puts a knife into your body, probably trying to kill you. I know that sounds strange, but when you listen, there will be some context. Another thing is that I noticed I made a mistake in my English. So if you notice the mistake, comment on the Facebook post. And the first person to get it right will, well, they won't win a prize because I have nothing to give, but get like a thumbs up, a like from me. Remember, all the rock and roll vocabulary is on the website, rockandrollenglish.com. Go there, read it, do the quiz, and learn it. So, enjoy the show, and I will speak to you again at the end. Happy listening. Dan the Man, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm alright. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Dan. How are you getting on with autumn? That means, how's it going?
Yeah, it's bloody cold here today.
Oh, nice word, bloody cold. Very English, that means it's very cold. I can see you have a winter jumper on, Dan.
Mm-hmm. €3. What do you think?
I think that was a rip-off, which is a very nice word, actually. What does it mean, Dan?
It means I've wasted my money.
Yeah, you paid way too much for that piece of shit. Anyway, how do we start the show, Dan?
With a review.
Yes. Do you think we have a review?
I reckon we have 2.
Dan's saying this because he saw them on Facebook. Just so everyone knows, although Dan keeps himself secret on Facebook, he watches everything, okay?
Like a hawk.
Yes. That's a very nice term as well. I'm watching you like a hawk, like intensely. He doesn't miss a comment or a like, okay? So he may try to give this impression like I'm too cool for Facebook, but that is not the case. Anyway, yes, obviously we are not going to read 2, we are going to read 1. So this review comes from Poland and somebody called, please forgive me if I make a mistake here, but Matthias Noack. And if that is wrong, it's Dan's fault because he told me that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, it says, Rock and Roll English is surely one of the best podcasts for English learners out there. Not only educative and authentic listening resource, but also very funny. Martin and Dan the Man are just a perfect match. Thank you for putting my name first. Anyway, keep on rocking, guys. P.S. It would be nice if all episodes were on iTunes. I didn't know they weren't on iTunes. If they're not on iTunes, there is a big problem. Yeah, so thanks for telling me the problem. I will have to look into that. I will have to do some research.
We've been doing this all this time.
Yeah, exactly. We are professionals. We haven't even got all the episodes on the most important podcast app. And then it says, PS2, have you ever thought about letting listeners donate to the podcast? I'm sure many of them would be happy to do this. If anyone wants to give us money, that's fine.
Let's start with Matthias. How much do you want to give us?
Exactly. We are open to offers. On a serious note, I think in the future I'm hoping to make some sort of course that if you want to buy, you can buy. So yeah, hopefully one day. Anyway, thank you very much for that review. It is very much appreciated. We are not stuck in a rut anymore. And if you don't know what that means, listen to probably the last 3 podcasts and you will find out. Anyway, Dan, do you know what we're talking about in today's podcast?
No, you haven't told me.
I haven't told you. But I was hoping you would probably be able to understand from the time of year, Dan. Because we are talking about Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
The excitement on your face is just unbelievable, Dan.
Well, did you celebrate Halloween?
No, Dan, because Halloween is tomorrow. So you asked me the question in the past, did I celebrate Halloween? So no. Anyway, to start this podcast and to get people in the mood for Halloween, I thought I would let you choose your favourite Halloween song.
I don't know a single Halloween song.
Jesus Christ, Dan. There's one so famous that, well, I said I will let you choose it, but really I thought,
What's the Ghostbusters
he
theme
has
tune?
to choose this. Not Ghostbusters, Dan. We're using Michael Jackson Thriller. Okay?
Ah, okay. That's the only
Okay.
Halloween song.
So now let's just listen to a bit of that. Do you feel Halloweeny?
No, but I feel like dancing.
And Dan the man dancing is a sight for anyone.
Oh, they call me Snake Hips.
Snake hips, that's a very nice word actually, usually used for good dancers, which Dan is definitely not. Anyway, we're going to start with the history of Halloween, Dan, then just look at some random Halloween facts, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, I haven't really got the precise history, but more or less, okay? So, the Irish apparently celebrated New Year on the 1st of November, many years ago. And the Celtics thought that on New Year, the boundary between the two worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. What does it mean, became blurred, Dan?
Unclear.
Yeah, very good, actually. That's the best answer you've ever given for one of them. And yeah, basically, because these worlds were blurred of the dead world and the not dead world, it just become stuff about, ghosts and shit like that, basically. Remember, this is not the official history, okay? It's not the official history.
Don't quote this in your homework.
But then apparently Pope Gregory III, seems like a great guy, then said that the 1st of November should be All Saints' Day and incorporated some of these Celtic traditions. But this is where the name comes from, Dan, because the 1st of November, even today, is All Saints' Day. And do you know another word for saints?
No.
Hallows, apparently.
No, that is.
And then,
quite
so
interesting.
it was Hallows Eve. So the eve is like the day before. Like Christmas Eve is the 24th of December. So the 31st of October was Hallows Eve, which then became Halloween.
Well done. That's quite interesting.
Well, that's it, Dan. And then apparently in 1000 AD, the church decided that the 2nd of November would be All Souls' Day because they thought that Celtic stuff sounded good, but we can't steal their one, so let's make it 2nd of November. And that's basically all I have for the history, Dan. What do you think of that?
Not much.
Well, that's what 10 minutes research on the internet does for you, Dan.
Well, hopefully it gets better.
Well, apparently then Halloween moved to America.
Oh, fucking hell. Then it all changed.
Exactly. And that's when everything went downhill. That's a nice expression to say when everything went badly, everything went downhill. And then, yeah, basically people started spending lots of money, buying chocolate and doing trick or treat, which is something people do on Halloween. What's that, Dan?
Well, it's where you go door to door and start begging for sweets.
Yep, and if they haven't got any sweets, then they do a trick. I remember when I was at university and I forgot it was Halloween and some kids knocked on the door and said, trick or treat. Said, I'm not giving you anything. And their trick was pretty shit as well, I must admit. And then people continued to knock and then I just thought, I'm not answering the door anymore.
What would you have done if they'd stabbed you?
Oh, nice question there, Dan. What would you have done if they had stabbed you? Nice third conditional. Probably died is the answer to that, but good question. Anyway, so apparently Halloween is the second biggest holiday in the world after Christmas in terms of money. Did you know that, Dan?
What, bigger than New Year?
Well, people spend more money because they spend money on the stupid outfits. So the outfit is like obviously the thing you wear. And I was thinking about the holidays, Dan, and I was thinking, what are your favourite holidays? So we've got like Christmas, Easter, Halloween, New Year, Valentine's Day, maybe.
Well, how do you like Valentine's Day?
I'm always alone on Valentine's Day, so
you love it?
Oh yeah, so I love it because I love to be alone. But yeah, I don't even know why it's called a holiday. Really, do you consider it a holiday? Halloween?
Well, I thought it was yesterday, so no.
Although in Italy it is a holiday. Well, the 1st of November is a national holiday. No work.
It's All Souls Day, isn't it?
No, that's the 2nd of November, Dan. All Saints Day. I also mentioned this about 2 minutes ago on the podcast, so pay attention. Yeah, Dan?
I sort of glazed over as you started talking.
Some nice rock and roll vocabulary again there, Dan, when he said, I sort of glazed over. That's when you basically stop listening and maybe your eyes go into the back of your head. So that's nice to know, Dan, that you listen to me. And there are many superstitions on Halloween. If you don't know what that word is, then don't worry. We have some explanations. Because apparently on Halloween, this is a quote from the article, people try not to break mirrors.
I always try not to break mirrors. So.
That is exactly what I thought, Dan, okay? Mm-hmm. Avoid breaking mirrors every day of the year, not just on Halloween. Because if you break a mirror, you get 7 years bad luck, apparently.
Fucking hell, how many mirrors have you broken then?
Good question. So, are you a superstitious person, Dan? So, if you are superstitious, you believe in these things.
I used to be when I was younger.
Oh, yeah?
Well, when I used to play football. You used to be very superstitious.
I still am, Dan. I still am. I do not break mirrors. I do not walk under ladders. And I hate black cats. Okay?
Talking of animals, actually, I saw on Facebook the other day, you put a post of a dog.
Yes.
You hate dogs.
I do hate dogs. But if you notice in the post, I also said, basically, dogs are great, except when they're chasing you on your bike.
No, but that's not true. You hate dogs all the time.
Well, people like dogs, so people liked the page, the post, Dan, okay? Mm-hmm. Anyway, dogs have got nothing to do with Halloween, so let's leave the dogs and let's keep going, boy, okay? So apparently, because the 2nd of November is All Souls Day, it's a great day, apparently, to find your soulmate. Did you know that?
No. Do you think you can find your soulmate?
Well, that's what I'm hoping, Dan, okay? Fingers crossed. Yeah, apparently it's a great time for women to identify their future husbands, and then by next Halloween, they will be married.
Hang on, so not men, it's women who can find their soulmates.
Well, people find soulmates, Dan, okay? It doesn't matter if it's men or women.
Well, you don't.
Yes, I'm talking about people in general, Dan, not me, okay?
Normal people.
Normal people, exactly, Dan. Come on. Apparently, in some places in America, it is illegal for kids to go trick-or-treating. So remember, we explained that before. That's when you go from door to door around your neighbourhood, which is the area you live, and ask for like sweets, basically. But yeah, it's illegal for kids over 12 to do that. And they can be fined up to $1,000. So that means to a maximum of $1,000.
I completely agree with that. It's a pet hate of mine when, the doorbell rings and it's a couple of, especially at Christmas, when there's a couple of 17-year-olds in a hoodie doing an awful rendition of Silent Night and then putting their hands out for money. It's the same on Halloween. Yeah,
I agree with you, actually. Nice word there, though, when you said it's a pet hate of mine. I don't know why we say this, but it just means it's something I hate. I did the singing thing when I was a kid to try and get some money. Never worked. They never gave me any money.
Yes, but when you're a child, it's okay. When you've got a couple of 17-year-olds doing it, you think,
exactly.
You're just robbing me.
Also true. My question is, though, if you've got like a 13-year-old, do they ask him for like identification or her?
I don't know.
Well, they need to sort this out. So they need to organise this, okay? Because it's a grey area. It's a grey area.
Maybe you could be the man that could go around identifying 13-year-old children.
Maybe I will do that. When I said that it's a grey area, it means that it's not clear. People don't know. Apparently on Halloween as well, though, in the old days, so like in the past, people had to wear animal skins on their heads. Okay? So I was thinking, if you had to, this is a second conditional, if you had to, which animal skin would you wear on your head? Remember, we're using the second conditional here because this is hypothetical. We're not killing animals. I just want to know if he had to. If someone had a gun to your head now and said, you have to wear an animal skin on your head, which animal skin would it be?
Hedgehog.
Good answer. So if you don't know what a hedgehog is, there will be a picture on the website. But basically, they're the ones that always get killed in the roads in England, and they have like spiky back. So if you touch them, you hurt yourself, which is good, Dan, because you could like put your head into people and hurt them. So
always thinking about the negative, aren't you? I was just thinking it might look like a nice haircut.
Sure. You look like a punk rocker.
Used to be.
Yeah, sure you did. Anyway, so my animal of choice, thanks for asking, Dan, would probably be the dog downstairs again. The dog that tries to kill me. Maybe I could kill the dog and use the dog skin as my hat.
Could you try and get a photo of this dog?
I can't stand near enough to the dog, Dan, without it trying to kill me.
Yeah, but it's on a leash, surely.
No, it's not on a leash. That's the problem, Dan. No, it's not on a leash. So a leash is like the piece of rope, let's say, that people use to hold the dog. That's the problem. That's why it always chases me. A friend of mine listened to my podcast recently. Oh, sorry, Dan, our podcast. And said, I can't believe you talk about the dog in such a horrible way. Just to let people know, I am only joking. I'm not going to kill the dog.
You couldn't kill the dog.
That's it, Dan. The dog will kill me first. But speaking of animals, apparently around Halloween, like animal shelters. So these are the places that take in animals that, I don't know, are sick, that do not have a home. And people adopt animals from these places, but they don't let people take black cats because they are worried that people will kill the black cats for Halloween.
Is that true?
Well, that's what this thing on the internet says. I mean, that is disgusting.
That's extreme.
Yeah. Who the hell would, pretend to say, oh yeah, I really want this black cat, and then go home and kill the cat? I mean, that's just not nice, is it?
No. Idiots.
Exactly. So yeah, if you're thinking of getting a black cat, you will probably have to wait until after Halloween for that.
So kill it in late November.
Dan, we can't say stuff like that, okay? Remember, that is a joke. We are joking. No animals are getting killed on this podcast. Okay?
English humour.
English humour.
It doesn't always work.
Exactly. And apparently, on Halloween, 20 million cards are sent to say basically Happy Halloween.
It's a complete waste of time. I don't even like sending birthday cards.
Well, this is exactly what I wanted to talk about. Cards in general. I mean, birthday cards are okay. Anniversary cards, for example. I mean, for me, an anniversary is not something that I should remember.
This is why you're single.
Very good. But when it's someone else's wedding anniversary, maybe...
Not your problem.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Maybe they got married 8 years ago. How am I supposed to remember that? And then they want a card from me. I mean, that's... Oh.
Who's this happened to?
Well, like, I don't want to mention names, but I know people.
They're listening.
They're listening, yeah. Yeah, anniversary cards. Thank you cards, I think I've mentioned this before, are just the most ridiculous thing. Someone buys me a birthday present, and then I have to send them a card saying thank you. And then do they send me a card saying thanks for the thank you card?
Yeah. It's an endless procession of thank yous.
Exactly. And I mean, Halloween, a card to say Happy Halloween. I mean, it's just some shit holiday just for Americans to make money. It's a load of shit. But anyway, that's what some people do. So some more general questions now, Dan. Have you ever dressed up for Halloween? So when I say dressed up, what do I mean?
Well, when you go dressed as a ghost or something.
Yeah, exactly. Wear clothes like as a witch, a ghost, or anything like that. Have you ever dressed up?
Well, I very rarely get invited to these sort of parties, but I did get invited to one which was held last night. But I got the invite so late. I think they asked me, so basically I wouldn't be able to find a costume and therefore wouldn't be able to go.
So you didn't go?
No.
Yeah, when I get invited to Halloween parties, though, I go, but I just don't dress up because I just feel like too much of a dickhead, really.
Yeah, but then you look like the dickhead that hasn't dressed up.
So you have two choices. I'll look like a dickhead dressed up or a dickhead that is not dressed up. I prefer the second choice, okay?
Just to look like a dickhead.
Exactly. I will be a dickhead with dignity, okay?
Yeah, don't change for anyone, okay?
Exactly, Dan. Exactly. Any good memories from Halloween?
Not really. I don't celebrate it. You?
The same answer as you, really. So, I hope everyone's enjoyed this podcast with probably the worst explanation of the history of Halloween ever, and just some other not very interesting stuff about Halloween. So
maybe one day we should host a Halloween party.
I've never had a party, Dan. I was thinking, because soon I may be buying a house, and I was thinking, shall I have a party when I move in? And I just thought, nah. I just don't. You know why? Because I have the fear that no one will come. You imagine that. I will be sitting there with my party hat on.
It'd be just me and you.
Exactly.
Well, I would be invited, yeah?
Oh, yeah. You would be invited, and you probably wouldn't come either. Just so.
No, I'd come. I'd come for moral support.
Oh,
have you ever been to a fancy dress party?
I've been to a few. I have dressed up in the past, but not for Halloween ones, just in general. I dressed up as Al Pacino from Scarface once, if you're asking.
Well, I once went to a fancy dress. I didn't want to, and I was forced to wear. I looked like a tit. It was the Mad Hatter, and I had this big purple hat on, big purple suit, which I'd rented, and almost no one else went in fancy dress, so it was fucking embarrassing.
Very nice. Notice there he says fancy dress. It's the same thing. I went in fancy dress, or I dressed up. That is a very nice note to finish the podcast on, because I'm happy something bad happened to you. Thank you for sharing that, Dan.
You're welcome.
And thanks for your time.
See you later.
See you later. Okay, so that was Dan the Man and me speaking about Halloween. So let's have a quick look at that rock and roll vocabulary. There was a lot, so I will try to do this quickly. At the beginning, I said to Dan, how are you getting on with autumn? Like, how are you managing? How's it going? And he responded, it's bloody cold here, which is sort of a swear word. It's not a nice thing to say, but it's quite funny, which means it's very cold. He was telling me about his jumper, for which he paid €3, and I said it was a rip-off. So if it's a rip-off, it means you paid too much money. We had a nice expression from Dan when he said, I'm watching you like a hawk. So if you watch someone closely, you can use this. Watch you like a hawk. There was also look into, when I said I will look into the problem about why the episodes are not on iTunes, which is something I didn't know. So I will do research about that and try to find the solution. We had snake hips when Dan was calling himself a good dancer and referred to himself as snake hips. We generally use this for good dancers, generally for men, actually. I don't know why. For example, John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever, people say snake hips. We had the word blurred when the boundary of the two worlds, the dead world and the not dead world, becomes blurred, becomes unclear. Normally we have blurred for like a blurred picture when you can't see something very well. There was also a band called Blur in the 90s, if you're interested. We had the word Eve. which remember is the day before something. Like Christmas Eve is the 24th of December. And remember the name Halloween comes from the Eve of Hallows, because Hallows was saints. And then it turned to Halloween. Anyway, we had downhill when we talked about when Halloween arrived in America. And I said that's when everything went downhill. That's when everything started to go badly. A nice phrase there to remember, when things started to go downhill. We had trick or treat, which is some Halloween vocabulary, which is the thing children do when they knock on doors and say trick or treat. We had that word stabbed from that third conditional when Dan said, what would you have done if they had stabbed you? Some real sexy third conditional there. We had the term glazed over when Dan said he glazed over as I started talking, which means basically he was not interested. We had the term pet hate, which I'm still not sure why we use this with pet. It's just a way to use hate as a noun, because it's strange to say a hate of mine. So we say a pet hate of mine. We had the term grey area when we were talking about children that we don't know if they're 12 or 13, so we don't know if they can go trick or treating. It's a grey area. People don't know what you can or can't do. A nice term again. We had in the old days, which means many years ago. Even people like me use this. For example, in the old days when I used to play on the PlayStation with Dan, actually, it was great, for example, in the past, a long time ago. We had the word leash when Dan said to me, surely the dog is on a leash, which is the sort of rope, let's say, that people use to hold a dog. But that's not true. Remember, the dog that terrorizes me is not on a leash. Then we had some more Halloween vocabulary with dressed up. When Dan said, have you ever dressed up for Halloween? And remember, an identical way to say that is fancy dress. So I could say, have you ever dressed up for Halloween? Or have you ever gone to a party in fancy dress? It's the same. Choose what one you want. So I hope you all have a good Halloween, even though, in my opinion, it's not really a holiday. But if you get a day off work like me on the 1st of November, that is great. So have fun. Go to the website to see the rock and roll vocabulary, rockandrollenglish.com, and just keep on rocking, baby.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.